Okay, thank you very much. I apologize for the glitches, and I appreciate the invitation that was rendered to me to speak to you this evening. Uh, you may have read my bio, which I think was circulating. Uh, I'm originally from Cuba, and my family emigrated to the United States when I was almost 15 years old in 1960. So I finished high school, went to college, medical school, internship, uh, and residency, and there's my bio sketch. I was very blessed. I seem to be the first Cuban American ever doing anything at wherever, my college, medical school at Johns Hopkins, being a resident at Yale, and being the chief resident of neonatology. And I was recruited in '73 to come to the Cincinnati area to join a group, Pediatric Associates of Fairfield. 2 years later, I became the health commissioner of Butler County, a post that I retained for 43 years. I'm still employed by the health department as a medical consultant. I've taught pediatrics both at the bedside at Children's Hospital as well as in my private office, one of four that's around Cincinnati, since 1973. Currently, since I'm mostly retired, I serve on 3 different boards, each of which has something to do with medical missions. I've been a member of the Christian Medical and Dental Association for 25 years, and I currently serve on one of its boards, and that's Medical Education International. I've served on the board of Caring Partners International since '93, and also on the board of Equipping Ministries International, also based in the Cincinnati area at Mariemont Community Church. Next slide.
And Bob, I think that's where you and I met at a EMI presentation at Mariemont.
Perhaps so. My memory is not always great. So when people tell me that they remember this or that, I usually just agree with them, whether I really remember it or not. There was a time when I was a member of College Hill Presbyterian Church, and I remember the pastor, the first time that the pastor read this passage from Isaiah 52, verse 7. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns. I had this vision at the time of some of the missionaries that we were sending to Honduras, to India, to other places, and how as they descended on the plane or arrived by train or whatever means of transportation, what a wonderful presence they made on a foreign land. And since I came from a different country, I was an immigrant until I became a citizen in 1968. I think I've always appreciated and had a passion for serving the Lord, not only in my neighborhood, within my family and circle of friends, but also the community at large as a pediatrician, health commissioner, but also volunteering in church activities. And eventually God led me to become a missionary in the international arena. And for the first 20 years of my life in medicine here in Cincinnati, from '73 to about 1993, I was really more interested in paying off student loans and earning money so we could move from an apartment to a house, and purchasing a decent car, and really was not all that involved with anything having to do with either the church or with missions or with Jesus himself. But I had a very powerful experience in the early 1990s where the Lord told me that my way of expressing the love of Jesus was not acceptable. And I was very convicted because I thought, or the Lord anyway, told me that I had talents that I had never utilized in medicine in places that really, really needed me. So I felt a very strong calling to engage in international medical missions, serving a week or two at a time. And I found the perfect match in Caring Partners International. And some of you may have heard Dr. Adam Reed, our president, speak 2 weeks ago. I serve on that particular board. I've actually been there longer than Adam and Rhonda Reed, who basically run the ministry today, do a wonderful, wonderful job. So in '92, I volunteered to go to Nicaragua, where I served for approximately 10 days teaching the neonatal resuscitation course with a group from UC, all of us Christian physicians and nurses. And that was really an eye-opening experience because I felt well utilized by the Lord since I was the only person who was bilingual, and I was able to translate from the various teachers and professors from Bethesda, from Children's Hospital, and I was able to translate the entire coursework over a 3-day period of time. After that, I was like hooked. I thought that this was really something that God was calling me to do. And since the 1990s, my wife, who's a psychiatric nurse and social worker, and I have volunteered and have literally gone around the world serving in many countries, China and India, Ukraine and Nigeria, the Middle East, as well as Holland and Japan. They don't all have to be third world countries. They just need to somehow hear about Jesus Christ and what he's done in my life. Next slide. So I thought tonight my theme is going to be an encouragement to each of you to consider going on a mission internationally. So I'm going to quote several passages that come directly from the voice of Jesus Christ himself. In Matthew 9:37, he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." A harvest field that was basically untouched when I started medical missions in the early 90s was Cuba, the country that basically had kicked out my parents, both of them doctors. They had their office and all of their office equipment expropriated, meaning taken over by the government. And we had to leave in late 1960. My dad had to go to school again in the United States and received his diploma from the University of Alabama in Birmingham in 1963. My mom never actually practiced in the United States. She never actually got her degree. So in any case, I knew that the number of individuals working in Cuba were very few, and I had to go through a process of forgiving the government for robbing me of my youth and robbing my parents of their property and car and medical office. So after going through that process in 1996, I was sent by Caring Partners to start a ministry in Cuba, which lasted approximately 20 years. It's the longest running Christian ministry to the country of Cuba, allowed by the Cuban government to not only teach and see patients, but also distribute Bibles throughout hospitals and medical schools. And that's one of the things that we do. Next slide. Jesus also said, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. The famous instruction by the Lord to go forth and evangelize. Next slide. About 10 years ago, the Lord called me to go to Haiti, serving a year or a little longer before the earthquake hit. This was one model of medical mission that I want to share with you. It involves running a pharmacy and running a clinic. In one slide, I'm examining a mother and her child in a Catholic church in Port-au-Prince, where we worked for a day and saw approximately 300 patients. In the middle slide, we have a lot of high school and college students, some of them pre-med or involved in medicine, actually. They start right after high school, that are helping us to sort through the medications that we're going to be distributing via the pharmacist that comes with us every year that we go to Haiti. Teaching him how to do a cardiac examination. Next slide. This is the way our clinic looks in Haiti. We take nurses, physicians, and crowd handlers. One of the most important jobs is maintaining some semblance of order as people register, get their vital signs taken, etc. The slide to your right is a young girl with type 1 diabetes who'd been without insulin for almost a month, and she came in weighing approximately 47 pounds. Once in a while, the Lord smiles on you and you're able to save a life. And this young lady, who was about 14 at the time, God brought her just about at the right time. And we were able to get her stabilized, get some IV fluids, take her to the nearest emergency room, get her admitted to the hospital, and she survived. Next slide. Mark 16:15 says, he said to them, Jesus, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Next one. Next slide. John. I picked one from each of the writers of the gospels. This one is from John 20, 21st verse. Against Jesus said, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. Boy, those are pretty big sandals to fill. So the Father sent Jesus, and now Jesus is sending me. Next slide. So now we're in Cuba. We've been in Cuba now this is our 25th year. Currently, we take 3 teams from the Christian Medical and Dental Association to Cuba every year. This is our neonatology team that was with us 2 years ago, seeing patients, lecturing on Zika virus at that particular time and some of the effects of Zika on the brain and other organ systems. We get an opportunity to pray with patients. In the days when we started the ministry in the 90s, the government did not allow us to pray for patients, but on subsequent trips, we have been able to do so, I would say, for the last 15 years or so. And you can see a couple, Angelica and George Gonzalez, praying for an adolescent or young adult girl in one of the wards. This is a way of demonstrating the love of Jesus on the wards. We hand out Bibles to all the staff. We hand out Bibles to patients, to their families. Normally, we go through 2,000 New Testaments for each of the trips. So that's about 6,000 New Testaments that we distribute it to all medical students, residents, staff members, nurses, and the rest of the staff that works in the hospital. It's amazing that the communist government of Cuba is allowing the Baptist Church, our hosts in Cuba, and the Christian Medical and Dental Association to go as far as we do, because I don't think that we could get away with doing a lot of the things that we do in all of the major university hospitals in Cuba at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. So it's really amazing the doors that the Lord has opened. Next slide, please. We take toys for all the children. That's your slide to the left, with 3 of our nurses. Oftentimes we bring a clown who serves not only in the hospitals to entertain the children, and it's always a big hit. And there's usually a Christian story that we're allowed to tell. In this particular case, in the middle slide, our clown, who is just a real estate dealer here in Cincinnati, that's what he decided he wanted to do during this trip, since he's not a physician. And he became a clown in almost every church that we visited. We had balloons and we had toys, and we were able to do that. Another way of doing ministry is not only teaching, not only bringing Bibles and distributing them, not only bringing toys for children that are hospitalized, presents for adult patients, entertaining the children and giving them a little bit of respite, but we also take computers for children with autism who are intelligent enough to be able to communicate through alternative and augmentative communications. And we have 2 speech pathologists and a physical occupational therapist who go to Cuba with us once a year to train children on how to use this instrument. Cubans have only seen it on television, but we actually brought the first bunch, and I think we're up to about 8 children in Cuba who have been selected for the Christian Medical and Dental Association to bless in this particular way. Next slide, please. I will finish with this particular quote from the book of Acts. "You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." Our pastors preaching on this particular passage have always indicated that Jerusalem would be your family, your circle of friends, maybe your circle of employees at work, people with whom you work. Judea might be the community at large, might be Cincinnati, might be the state of Ohio. Samaria would be almost like the other side of the track. The Jews and the Samaritans didn't necessarily mix. And this entire debate about systemic racism in the United States, I think, has brought forth the need for groups to go into Samaria and reconcile and even preach the gospel. And then to the ends of the earth, and that's where the Lord called me to do. So I think I'll go to the next couple of slides and we will close the presentation. Sometimes we have fairly large teams that go to Cuba. I think we've had a team as large as 26 at one time. So these are different CMDA, Medical Education International teams. Next slide. There's a nice picture of Havana on the top left around 11 o'clock. More of our large teams in Cuba. The car situation in Cuba is delightful. If you happen to like old cars, you may see that that's an Edsel parked in front of the Capitol building in downtown Havana. Next slide. Some of our teams are small, like the one at 5 o'clock. We only had 4 individuals, a surgeon, a hematologist, oncologist, and me, a pediatrician. And this lady was a volunteer who went on rounds on the wards to hand out Bibles and toys. The Palace of Fine Arts is the very well lit building from downtown Havana. And I showed the 2 top slides. I trained approximately 50 young missionaries from 7 countries in Latin America, right here in Cincinnati, on how to conduct medical missions, both short-term and long-term. and what they could do in their own countries and in their own towns and communities in terms of setting up medical missions, both to glorify God and to serve the community, and particularly those that are most needy. So this demonstrates the fact that you can do your ministry in Jerusalem. Hopefully you're doing that with your family and circle of friends. In Judea, which would be more what I'm doing here in Cincinnati for this ministerial Christian university, which has both courses in Spanish and English, and also being able to serve in other parts of the country and around the world. Next slide. So I'm going to close with the following for your consideration and for you to pray about. If you're a medical student or a resident or physician, we are all on a mission journey already, and that is treating and healing and caring for the sick. Because you are followers of Jesus, the great physician, you are sharers in his healing ministry. I think we bring to the doctor-patient relationship a lot more than non-believer physicians bring as a general rule. Second point, God calls us through the words of Jesus to have a medical ministry that evangelizes, and that is ready to share the gospel wherever God places us. Could be in the clinic, could be in the operating room, could be making rounds. What helped me a great deal, uncomfortable as I was, my dad always admonishing me never to talk to patients about religion or politics. It was difficult for me initially to share the love of Jesus with other people. Fortunately, I was one of the first in CMDA to take the saline solution course, and this helped me tremendously to learn a formula, if you will, on how to share Jesus with love, with warmth, and with respect. Ask God, point number 3, whether he wants you to expand your medical ministry to involve volunteering your medical skills, which could be in your community. I have done free clinics in our church for immigrant children, mostly Mexican and Guatemalan, that don't necessarily have their papers and don't trust the medical system. You might do this through your church, as I have done through Princeton Pike Church of God, or Matthew 25 would be another ministry that can generally accept not only donations, but people who might want to work. And the final slide, I believe. The fourth point is that possibly God is calling you to serve short-term in a foreign medical field of some sort. You have some choices locally through your church, Caring Partners International, Christian Medical and Dental Association, Medical Education International, if you want to serve through teaching, which is how we serve. Caring Partners mostly serves through setting up clinics, as we do in Haiti once a year. I tried to volunteer with Samaritan's Purse when they set up the clinic and field hospital in Central Park in New York, but I was not accepted because of age and other risk factors. But that's another neat way of serving. In other instances, God may be calling you to serve in a long-term mission field. I've met people who have served 30 or more years in the Congo and other places, Kenya, India. Oftentimes, your volunteer work would last for decades. So all of us can give of our time, our talents, and our treasure. We can all give resources to long-term missionaries so that they may be our beautiful feet bringing the good news. Even when we can't serve physically, we can serve by offering our resources to missions. So thank you very much. I'd like to close with prayer. Lord, I give you thanks for this evening and for the great honor of being able to address some in our community who are dedicated to serving you in many different ways, many different methods. I thank you because you have opened so many doors for me to return to Cuba, to forgive the government for what they harm that they cause to my family and to so many of my friends. I thank you that you have given me grace, that you have taught mercy and forgiveness, tenets of the Christian church. Thank you for those who are serving even now, missionaries that we support. Thank you for our team in Cuba, our team in Haiti. At the present time, given COVID-19, we are separated from them except through the internet. I ask your blessings upon everybody here tonight and anybody else that may listen to these inadequate words, I would say, that are aimed primarily at praising you for all that you've done in my life. In Jesus' name, amen.